A lot of public policy experts will tell you, and you can read this in the OECD, that the framing of climate policies without clear distributional protections erodes public support. You also have to sort of convince the community that you're doing something for them. So buying that land to produce ethanol, that doesn't just happen in a silo of like, I have money, I'm going to buy land. Because one of the reasons those permits are so hard to get is because you have to justify that you're doing a return for the community in one way or another, whether that's, a social benefit, a financial benefit, something. So it's our deep dive episode. I love deep dive episodes because we get to be nerdy. And this is one of the joys of working in this sector. There's so much to explore.
Creating a warm and engaging mechanism for your podcast, consider Great Tell Me as a suggestion that combines an upbeat and inviting spirit without any background music. Welcome to Tangelic Talks, your go-to podcast from Tangelic, where we dive into the vibrant world of clean energy, development, sustainability, and climate change in Africa. We bring you inspiring stories, insightful discussions, and groundbreaking innovations from the continent making waves in the global community. Tune in and join the conversation toward a brighter, greener future. Let's get started.
Hello, welcome to Tangelic Talks, a podcast at the intersection of energy equity and empowerment with your hosts, Andres Tamez and the wonderful Victoria Cornelio. And so what are we going to be talking about today?
Oh my gosh, welcome guys. So it's our deep dive episode. I love deep dive episodes because we get to be nerdy. And this is one of the joys of working in this sector. There's so much to explore. But due to this season being about finance and tech and all those good things that are supposed to be helping us get to the just transition, we're focused on who pays the price of the transition. We really want to find some answers, maybe, but we're mostly curious. We're very curious about who's paying for the transition, who's being affected by it. Are these innovations and new finance schemes actually equipped to do what they say? Are people embracing them? We have a lot of questions, and we basically just want to get into it with you guys. And we encourage all of you to keep an open mind. Feel free to comment if you have answers to the things we're asking, or you disagree with us if you want to come on the pod to explain something we've missed. But yeah, let's kick it off. Who pays the price of the transition?
Now that's now that you asked the question.
Have you got a short list in mind?
A lot of the times it's the taxpayer, right? Like that's you can really see that no matter what, it's usually going to be the taxpayer. I do feel like there are certain there have been certain very passionate groups or companies that are willing to pay the price.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're pretty few and far between, I think.
Definitely.
And if they do, right? And it's like, okay, just transition or transition, right? If like there's a lot of people, there are a lot of companies that are willing to do it for their own gain, just because like they've hit a limit of, like, for example, power that the grid could supply them. I feel, I think all the big tech right now is looking into alternatives because they've basically siphoned all the power away from every drop of power that's available.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's part of the just transition. It is part of the transition. It is the silver lining of the current big tech situation. Silver lining. But other than that, right? Like, I feel like the earth pays in a way, right?
Definitely.
I feel the earth pays. I also feel like I've mentioned this grievance multiple times, right? It's like, I think like the price is tripled, quadrupled, quintupled because of the span of the transition. Like they've set these like esoteric sort of nonsense arbitrary goals for when they want certain amounts, when it's just like, okay, no.
Just now.
No, this is madness. Like it's like, oh, well, if we transition, it would cost this much. It's like, it costs almost that much to not transition with your current plans.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is also it's framed as just transition because it's supposed to be something that has justice at its core, right? So if you look at the United Nations website and a lot of the researchers we're talking about, we're gonna have on the Q&A, so you can find that on tangeliclife.org. But the United Nations, their finance and climate justice department, they talk about climate finance and just transition, highlighting that those least responsible face the greatest barriers to adapt without sufficient resources. So this is the justice issue that climate finance and innovation and tech are supposed to be addressing, right? So if we're going to say the taxpayer is that person that is contributing less to the damage and is paying more to fix the damage, that's kind of where you can see a bit of a tension there. But a lot of times it depends on who you ask. Like if you ask governments, if you ask households, corporations, different social classes of communities, everyone's going to think differently. And maybe that's why it's such a hard conversation because it's very based on lived experience. You know what I mean? And what a community or a group prioritizes as, well, I'm willing to do this trade off because of X, Y, or Z.
Sure, sure. I think is there even a trade-off at this point right now?
Mm,
Would you say there is?
question.
Like is there even any benefit? Like price, like energy prices are going up.
Hmm.
Like and we're not really seeing like a big push towards renewables.
Well, again, I think that's where the what each group finds important lies in. You know, so if, for example, you are a household that is very worried about the cost of living crisis, the fact that you're not seeing your energy bills go down and that you're seeing that everything's getting more expensive is probably a huge concern, as it should be, right? You're going under. But if you are someone that is relatively comfortable and what you really care about is the countryside and nature and things looking pretty because you love nature and you love going out on a hike and being in the rivers and all this stuff, then you might think it's worth it because if we do this thing, nature's going to be better and we're protecting the environment and you're maybe involved in conservation efforts, that sort of stuff, right? So that's why it's so hard to sort of talk about just transition as this monolith of the population that is transitioning because we each have our own priorities and what we're willing to trade off and for what.
Now, I do think there are perspectives that I think are it's okay to just throw them out. Throw them out.
Are you ready to out some people? Is this
Like
the episode?
it might be like I do think there are like certain perspectives that are just like just well they have to do with like if your perspective is completely, let's say, I don't want to say self-serving, right? Because we're all sort of self-serving in a way, right? But like it's not about the transition at all,
Okay.
right? It's about what extent it gained from the transition, right? Like a lot of people who are paying the price, it's because they're going to get a return,
Hmm.
right? Like families aren't, yes they're going to be benefited by the transition, nature's going to be benefited by the transition, but they're not getting like an actual financial return, they're
Hmm.
not investing in it,
Yeah.
right? So I think that people who have like, I think that's a conflict of interest. I think there are concerns about it at this level, right?
Yeah.
At this level, not their concerns as a whole, right? Because they're important, they're funding the transition, but at a human level of who should we pay attention to right now,
Hmm.
I think they're like not the highest priority.
Fair. Fair enough. I mean, it's interesting that you say that. Like, you're not necessarily investing money, but you're doing, like you're maybe doing sacrifices or you're accepting certain changes in regulation for things to happen. Because when we say who pays for the transition, the price or the cost isn't just monetary, right? There's the social, the political cost. It's not just dollars, but like the well being or even your own interest. There are things you might not be able to do anymore for the quote unquote greater good, or because they've now been made more expensive. So you can't do them because they're bad for the environment. And, each to their own there. But there's a
Yeah.
really interesting study from McKinsey that estimates that around 9.2 trillion dollars annually are invested for infrastructure for net zero pathways. But like people don't care about net zero anymore. But there's a lot of investment going into net zero. And it could go back to your point of, well, there's no other way to do it. It's a self-interest investment to keep the,
Yeah.
the sector going. But on the other side of that, does that matter? It means we're at least investing on the quote unquote important thing, which is pushing net zero as close as we can, if possible, if ever.
Sure. Well, that only really works if like we're expanding towards net zero, and and the usage isn't expanding to the point where actually we're just going to need the renewable stuff and the old stuff at the same time.
Exactly.
Right? And that's sort of the way energy usage is expanding at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like one of the big things, and this is just me spitballing, right? But like I was watching a video on it basically had to do with solar panels, right? And it's mostly based around the United States. But like one of the things that happens in the United States is there's very strict zoning, right? And a lot of the zoning has to do with financial incentives over like actually protecting any environmental stuff or whatever, right? It's mostly about keeping property values up, or doing things that like corn farming for ethanol, right? Not for food, for ethanol, which is like the additive they use on gasoline. And it's like, and the host was talking about how like he lives in a rural area and they have this solar farm, right? And it does wonders for everyone. And one of the reasons like they don't have the capacity to build more of them is because there's being a lot of the space that's actually zoned for use is being used to make this horrible additive for it's an archaic and inefficient way of making fuel. I think more efficient. I actually don't understand the science behind why ethanol is necessary. I just know that it's a really dumb way to produce ethanol, to use so much space and so much water.
Yeah. It's very resource intensive.
It's very resource intensive, and it could easily be replaced by anything else like that could be in that area, especially when it's so hard to get permits to do anything with land at all. And these are just fields, and they're not being used for anything really productive, right? Like people will argue that it's productive, but I would argue otherwise. Because I like being a contrarian. I'm not saying I'm right. But
it's true, because a lot of these things, I think there's a lot of things where it's just like you also have to sort of convince the community that you're doing something for them. So buying that land to produce ethanol, that doesn't just happen in a silo of like, I have money, I'm going to buy land. Because one of the reasons those permits are so hard to get is because you have to justify that you're doing a return for the community in one way or another, whether that's, a social benefit, a financial benefit, something. The community has to get something. Or at least that's supposedly how it works. Because there's another study from a German industry analysis consultancy. This is on Reuters. And they warn that the transition strategy in the European Union could impose a 4.8 to 5.5 trillion euros. And this burden is on businesses and households without policy coordination. So this is why it's so important for it to be, to some extent, in the political agenda. Because without policy coordination, we're just dumping money down the drain.
Yeah.
That's a lot. All the numbers I found are trillion. I don't know how many zeros that is. That's a lot.
Here's one of my gripes too, right? And this is I'm justified in this. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that we're putting so many resources towards the transition, whether just or not? I guess
Mm-hmm.
And renewables are becoming, like, for example, in Germany, right? Like they've sort of moved away from renewables.
Yeah.
They've shut down a ton of their nuclear facilities, which used to produce most of the energy in their country. Right, France has stopped. I believe they stopped. I don't know if they've restarted, but for a period they stopped. They stopped working on bringing more nuclear reactors to be active.
Right.
So it's just like okay, like
Hmm.
this was obviously working really well,
Hmm.
right? Why are we stopping it? And why are we framing it as like a furthering of the just transition? Like I just don't get it. I don't get where the money is going. See, this is the problem for me. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, we're spending money on the just transition and people are paying for it. And you know what? Maybe it's a price we need to pay, but is it even happening? Is my big issue. For example, you have like it's a I believe it's it's a hot topic right now, but Greenland, right?
Hmm.
Like
Who
Greenland
would have thought
is
Greenland was going to be a hot topic?
I know, right? This is exactly what they tried to avoid by. I mean, yeah, well, actually, is it Greenland or Iceland? That's a hot topic right now. It's Greenland.
It's
It's Greenland.
Greenland, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which is well, that it is a false. It's always been a false flag. It's Greenland isn't real. I'm just kidding. It's not green. It's a lie. Isn't that like a true thing? Like they
I
used
don't
it as
know. I
like a
remember
way to like
hearing that it was supposed to be Viking myth, like trying to distract people from going, and that's why Iceland is
from
called
Iceland.
Iceland and Greenland is
Yeah,
Greenland.
trying to get people to go to Greenland
Yeah,
instead of
instead of
Iceland
Iceland.
because
That's what I heard growing up, but
yeah.
I've never verified it.
So anyway, like one of the things that they have there is like they have good geothermal, they have a good amount of renewables in different ways, right? And it's like and because their population is so low, it's fine,
Yeah.
right? And you have a lot of instances where so-called third world countries are really beating the West to the punch because they just build out the infrastructure. Who'd have thunk it? They just build it.
Talking.
They just make it because it's costing us a lot, and it's costing us a lot to not build anything. How much money do you have to spend on lip service? Not trillions. Let me tell you that much. Okay, you can maybe millions. I'll give you a billion, but trillions?
Yeah. No, it's too much. And that's the thing. I don't know if it's a messaging issue. I don't know if it's just something like we can't agree what a just transition looks like, so we're just transitioning with justice in the background or justice at the front to sort of push forward the transition while we figure out what the just part means. You know what I mean? I don't know how it comes together. There is a big debate on consumer vulnerabilities. So, again, the just transition isn't just for everybody. There's a big question of, so for example, in the UK, a big conversation is as more people transition into electrical, the gas networks still have to keep running until everyone's transitioned. But that means that the people left on the gas networks are going to have to pay more to keep it going. Or you
Is
have
natural
areas, sorry?
natural gas?
Mhm.
And okay, is it it's being replaced by electric now?
Yeah.
How much of the UK's energy comes from renewables?
I'm not sure. But we do have loads of wind farms, but I don't know what percentage they would take on. I'm gonna look it up and I'm gonna add it on the blog because that's a good question. But you do have pushback on the renewable energy side because the UK is a small country or a small area of land. England is small. I'll give you that. Wales isn't very big. Scotland isn't that big. Northern Ireland, not a bit of a speck, you know? So we're asking people, communities, to accept that in their backyards, we're going to be putting up more wind turbines or that we're going to be modifying the countryside to fit solar, you know? Again, we don't have sprawling land like the US does. So this is literally in someone's backyard, in someone's town, in someone's area. And that's a lot. So again, a messaging issue. Are we getting the whole nation to agree on the just transition because you do it for your fellow citizen? It's a hard sell in the middle of a cost of living crisis where the energy bills are still one of the top priorities for household spending.
And it seems like a good amount of the UK's energy does come from renewables. I believe slightly over, I believe almost 50%, almost 50%, coming from mostly a mix of wind and nuclear. And I believe wind is a huge part of that. So
Yeah, wind's
that
the
makes
main
perfect sense.
one. Yeah, and we're developing new reactors or new nuclear plants and stuff. So it's there, but then again, a lot of the investment is government, which is taxpayer money, or it's private that will then be given back.
Right,
It's
right,
hard to
right.
know because our energy isn't national.
Mm, gotcha.
Neither is water.
Which is like, well, depending on the country, that could be either good or bad. Like it really does depend on the country. In the United States, it even depends on the state whether or not that's good or bad.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So it's a hard
depending
one
on
because then
how.
again, now you've got uh if we're using the UK as the example, you've got a country that has a national plan that has to be enacted by third parties that then have to talk to the community who voted for an MP to represent them in this national plan or in this strategy that is also supposed to be local and regional. There's all these policy tensions. So I want to think the just transition is just a lot more complicated than just, well, we're doing it for the people because who is people and why is people? You know, it's a hard one. It's a hard one. And with fossil fuel prices, those are also up. So is that the sell? It's like, hey, renewable is cheaper. You do hear a lot of pushback because of the initial investment into renewables and like, oh, you'll see it back. But again, who's paying for that initial investment and are they the ones that are going to see it back?
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's called an
Well,
investment.
yeah. Well, I think they will see it back. Like,
That's the
especially
goal.
depend. Like the thing is, like the initial investment, for example, for solar, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
never been better. Like solar, like buying solar panels in bulk has gotten surprisingly cheap.
Yeah.
Um, and the initial investment, for example, for nuclear, right? Because like I like solar and nuclear. I like wind. I'm a little bit more iffy on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like the initial investment for nuclear is like the bulk is the initial investment. The rest of it is kind of just like operations cost. Like it's not even. What meanwhile, solar has a little bit more cost when it comes to maintenance,
Right.
upkeep. But
Yeah.
it doesn't really have an operations cost. So
Yeah.
like it's just sort of there now.
Yeah.
Unless it's a farm. But like it can be a little bit complicated, but like we've gotten to the point where the technology is absolutely there. Smaller countries like the UK, a lot of African
Yeah.
nations have successfully moved a lot of their capacity.
Yeah. Kenya is a
Uh,
shining example of that.
oh yeah.
Yeah. It's huge.
And it shouldn't I feel like it's way more complicated than it has to be in that sense. I respect the UK's like 2030 goal for like
Mm-hmm.
having like what is it 95%
Yeah.
low carbon, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a bunch of buzzwords that like it could be 95% renewable, or it could just mean read the manifesto to find out what 95% low carbon means.
Yeah, yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows?
exactly. Yeah. And again, we don't have agreed jargon on this. It's just jargon.
Exactly.
We don't have
It's just
agreed
jargon.
metrics. We don't have agreed, not global, nationally, you know what it means if you work in the space, but globally, low carbon here might mean low carbon somewhere else. And we're all starting from different places. So again, maybe it's more a question of is the initial price too high or is it fair? Because if you are starting with, I don't know, a lot of climate goals are reflecting a reduction in carbon from the 1990s. Others are more like, well, we weren't really doing much in the 1990s, so yeah, that's easy. We'll do it in no time. You know what I mean? So is the starting point fair? And then do we have to move the goalpost so the price is fair? I don't know where we adjust for fairness here, but fairness is so subjective. It's hard.
Well, here's the thing, right? And we had it in our thing for this episode, right? Like one of the things we wanted to ask was, what do you mean by cost,
Yeah.
right? And one of the options is development,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't like. Yes, development is costly,
Yeah.
But like for the most part, the technologies we need for a transition are here, and the money is there.
Yeah.
It's floating around. It's going into the pit. It's going into the great money pit that we burn, that we throw money into,
Yep.
infinite amount.
Yeah,
When
just
we
put it
could
there.
just throw it, yeah, when we could just throw it at just put it 1-to-1 into nuclear panels. Why did they have to go? Like the inefficiencies of
Mhm.
these systems is the thing that really irks me, because okay, why are you spending triple the amount to not do it? To not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
We've lost it. We've lost the plot a little bit.
And there's a lot of issues with regulations. I remember, like, for example, one of the things that stifled, for example, nuclear in the United States is that there was a big push towards it.
Right.
Then the 3 Mile Island thing happened, and at some point there was new regulation on it. Every single, like, the regulation on it was changing daily.
Mhm.
So fat, like nuclear facilities that were going up had to literally day by day adjust
Oof.
everything,
Yeah, rough.
based on the new regulation that was coming in, right?
Mhm.
And we're paying the price, and that was happening in like the 80s, 90s, and we're paying the price for that now, right? Because if they would have, especially in the United States, where like net zero is so much more far off than other places,
Mhm.
um, like it really seems like this was like, especially with like Americans being like, a lot of like the big money in America being like, you can't stifle innovation, you can't stifle it. It's like,
Yeah.
you guys have stifled all the good things. Now you're like you don't stifle all the things that like aren't helping anyone.
No, it's very
Like honestly,
selective, the stifling
yeah,
innovation thing.
very very selective.
Yeah.
And I feel conflicted. It also, like, it is the transit the whether the transition is just or not depends on where you are.
Yep.
Like, if you are getting rid of natural gas and replacing with electricity,
Mhm.
it makes a huge difference whether you're like in Nevada, or like, let's say Las Vegas, right? Because they have a lot of energy that comes from hydroelectric,
Yep.
right? Or like, for example, anywhere that's powered by the Canadian dams, right? Or if you're out in the middle of nowhere, like, it's very different. Or if you're in a big city that doesn't have access to them, right? It's
Mhm.
just simply, that's very different. One place, it might actually be convenient to keep burning natural gas, because if you move over to electric, then it's just going to be an added burden onto the grid that it probably can't take at this moment, right now. And that's part of the just part of the
Yeah.
transition, right? You have to take into account, how is this going to affect people, and you have to take it into account,
Well,
because
it's why
other
it's a
because
transition.
yeah,
We can't just
yeah,
switch everything off today and roll out tomorrow. That being said, transition is a great placeholder for someday, at some point. You know, we can't overhaul the systems right away, but we should be slowly moving towards the goalpost, not flip flopping back and forth, which is kind of what is hard to track.
here in Mexico, right? Like, I've just given up on the conversation entirely. It's such a nonsense, such a
Fair.
the absolute nonsense that goes on here when
Hmm.
it comes to the transition is just, which is why, like, even though I'm frustrated with the United States, because they're sort of the worst on this, not in Mexico, because Mexico is, for me, right, of the countries I know of, I know there are a lot of places that could be worse, but like, it's such a thing, that's a discussion that's not happening, and a
Right.
priority that doesn't exist,
Hmm.
and a priority that's been stifled. Like, the government has actively, well, the electric grid, because like the thing with Mexico is, it's like national and not national at the same time. Like, the
Okay.
oil is national, not national,
Hmm.
energy is national, but there are a lot of like private incentives in it,
Hmm.
um and we have regulated out competition for the government has regulated out
Got it.
competition.
Hmm.
And one of the things that was happening is they were putting a lot of wind, right?
Hmm.
And the government decided, okay, but you can only make a certain amount on it.
Okay.
This was a while ago. Hopefully, they've changed their perspective on it. But one of the things that caused a lot of people to give up on the project as a whole, private endeavors on it that were really beneficial, especially because, like, if, for example, you built it on somebody's land, from what I've heard, like from like people that like know the people, like if you agreed to have it built on your land, they'd be like, you don't worry about paying electricity.
Right. Yeah.
You just don't worry about it. This is built on your land, and I think they might have even gotten a cut. But then the government came in and they were like, "Oh, you guys are not charging too little for electricity, but you're making too much, taking too much away from us."
Yeah.
And so they were like, "You can only make a certain amount," and it's absolutely ridiculous. The things that happen here in Mexico. So despite how bad the United States is, I actually have hope they can do something.
Yeah.
Unlike here, where it's just like locked in place because the government is such an obtuse beast.
Well, this is the thing again, right? We keep talking about the need for policy, but maybe not all policies are good, you know?
Oh,
and
no,
the development
no.
of policy is very bureaucratic and it's very slow. So you might have a goal for 2030, which is crazily enough in 4 years, and your policy could be stuck in development hell for 2. And then it passes with 2 years left under your goals, and now you have to revise your goals because you didn't get the policy you need. Do you see what I mean? So it's very bureaucratic. However, there are areas where we need at least mitigation measures. So going back to your point on efficiency, the money isn't being used efficiently, but that's what AI is for, babes. AI is supposed to be efficiency. That's why we don't need human error anymore. Just put an AI to do it. And a lot of the just transition is upskilling workers, right? We need people, if they're going to transition from one sector that we're trying to eliminate, basically, into one that we're making the sphere of the future, then we need to bring people along. You need to prepare people. But who's supposed to do that? Is it the government? Is it the companies that are investing? Is it just a national curriculum overhaul that is giving out apprenticeships? Like, how does that work? But the issue with the lag we're having is while we figure out who's supposed to do that, there's other interests that are preparing automation to do it. So unemployment is coming from both angles.
Yeah. Unemployment is coming from every single side to just eat you up. Like, I think I believe the amount of people that have lost their jobs is equivalent to that of the Great Recession. So,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's bad.
So, like, it's record breaking, the amount of people that are losing their jobs right now, and it's also like record breaking how many companies are regretting laying people off because of this transition. And we've sort of reached the architectural limit of the capabilities of AI. Like, nobody wants to say it out loud. Like, the way large language models work, we've reached that point where every single new update is going to be much more resource intensive than the last, because we're reaching the limits of the limits of the architecture of the technology.
Right.
And so there's either going to have to be a completely new type of AI developed, or you can just feed it way more power. Just pump more power into it, which is not efficient, and it also probably won't work from the experts I've heard speak on it. So, like, and at this point, like, I believe a study from MIT is like 95% of the work that is assigned to AI in real world scenarios, the AI produces an unsatisfactory result 95% of the time. And so it was obviously like a big, companies got really excited because they were going to be able to lay people off.
Yeah.
They laid everybody. And now we have some newer models are like multiple models debating with each other to find out the best solution,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is good to keep the models in check,
Yeah.
right? But it also means that you're running the same prompts. So you're generating like triple, quadruple the tokens you would be.
Yeah.
So you're using quadruple the energy you would be just to get mild increases in the effectiveness of the technology. And so we've sort of lost the plot with tech is a way to mitigate tech software as a way to mitigate like the or to facilitate the transition has sort of stopped being in the consciousness. Like just like net zero has completely stopped being in the consciousness. We just stopped talking about it. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
It's really sad. And
well, I think it's all
it
of
goes hand
that
in hand. Mm-hmm.
without like thinking about how you're going to integrate people back into this. You know what I mean? Because if we're going to say, this is one of the things I feel not enough people sort of address. When we say you need to upskill people, that's not necessarily that, oh, now we have to have a bunch of engineers who can operate wind farms and solar farms. It's that, what are the jobs of the future? If we're going to create, say, an upgrade of the grid so we can feed AI more, and that's the future we're heading for, well, I guess we're going to need more engineers. Prepare the people that are going to do that great grid upgrade. Do you know what I mean? Or prepare the people that are going to now be working in tech because we have all this data and all this, big language models that are being rolled out. Like, what is the thing that is going to give people a livelihood down the line? Because the government isn't just going to start giving money. So people still have to work. What are they going to work on?
Well, I feel like there are a couple of scenarios here, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them is that a lot of the people that are doing this have a utopian view of everything. They're like, eventually it has to make money, which is not true. It doesn't eventually have to make money. You can just keep losing money forever.
Yeah.
Possibly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably. But the other option, so like they're banging on this being like the thing that finally ushers in universal basic income,
Right.
So that's one faction, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the utopian faction. And then you have the other factions that are like, okay, it's over. One of them is like, it's over. It's just over.
Well,
Everybody, this is not going to pan out.
mm-hmm.
Either AI itself is going to destroy us, or it's just going to crumble, and you're going to have to pay for picking up the pieces, right? Because right now, like the markets are held up by AI.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't stop the hype,
No.
because other than AI, like you're basically in a recession. Without AI, you're basically in a recession right now, which I think is where all the like really forced and really obnoxious AI optimism is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
If we admit that there's a problem, the market will crash, which is the big fault of the current system with the markets, right?
Yeah.
And if the market crashes, then everything is stagnant, right? Like forget transition. Like we're gonna have problems. Like nobody's gonna be employed.
Yeah. No, we've sort of lost each scenario.
Yes, but also at the same time, right? Like a recession is a sign of things not going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, am I willing to have a recession right now? I'm almost 30, right? So that my kids' generations are left with a better world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that will definitely happens during a depression, right, or a recession or whatever, is, and one of the things that'll happen this time is a lot of the power that was consolidated that was sort of consolidated during COVID, right? As non-gigantic publicly traded companies were the only ones that were allowed to operate, right? Will probably reverse, like as these companies have to downscale. I believe and this is a perhaps thing, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have no, and I think this is the problem with the system the United States in particular has of depending on you have to care about the markets because all of your savings are there.
Yeah.
You're not, it's not in gold, which is something real. It's in like I said before the podcast, I was like the market and everybody's like retirement are being held up by Sam Altman's hopes and dreams and prayers, right? And like that's really bad. That's a really really bad situation to be in.
Yeah, it's at
But
least not
also
great.
it might be worth it to just take the hit, so that the countries so the nations can rebuild, so the markets can rebuild,
But that goes
so
back
we
to the
can stop
question,
getting
who's
rid of a
paying
lot
the
of.
price? Who's taking the hit? And is everyone going to feel the hit equally? Because that's a big conversation in climate change. We're all experiencing climate change. Just some of us get good weather in England while some people are burning to death. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a hard one. The trade-offs never look the same for everybody, which is why the just transition does so much heavy lifting. Because it's supposed to be that the transition isn't going to take over. It's just we're leaving nobody behind, which is why we're moving so slowly. That's the messaging, right? We're moving at the pace that society can keep up with, supposedly.
Well, I'd like to believe that, but I don't agree
Sure.
because I feel like the way you do this
Mm-hmm.
is okay. Then what is the thing we can do first?
Yeah.
What can we prioritize that will that will leave the biggest impact and will leave us primed to actually start transitioning out of like natural gas, for example, right? Because in Europe, a lot of governments basically told you to freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Like they told you to, not my fault, freeze for the winter for all I care. We have these projects that we're working on. They're like environmental projects, and like we're not going to let you use natural gas. We're not going to let you do this. We're not going to let you, if you have a cattle ranch, we're not going to let you just do your job anymore because cattle they produce so much emissions and stuff.
Yeah,
like that. So
methane.
and so what you get is just a sort of tyranny, a blind tyranny, and you make people have to burn wood, right? And which is
the worst.
Not only does it have emissions, but it's toxic.
Yeah,
so that's
terrible
great
for health.
family health.
Yeah,
terrible for health. And we could just focus. We could just lock in and say, okay, let's start with just the grid. Let's leave everything else on the wayside. Let's start with just the grid.
Right. You would think it's that easy, Andres, but we've talked about COP before on this podcast. And I hate to be the bearer of incredibly unsatisfying news, but in 2024, it was predicted that poorer nations, and poor, the definition of poor by the United Nations doesn't change that often. In the environmental program, it used to be nations that hadn't reached certain level of development, right? So poor is a semantics issue if you want to have it, right? But you can check the tangeliclife.org for the blog and you can read this news. In 2024, it was predicted that poorer nations require roughly here comes again, trillion dollars per year by 2030. Here we are again at 2030 for adaptation and mitigation. And that was supposed to pass in COP29, which was in 2025. No, that was a 2024 one. Last year in COP30, we saw that it didn't happen. This is what a lot of people refer to as the Adaptation Loss and Adaptation Fund, which is still not funded, and people are still not pitching in. You'll probably have heard some of our guests this season talk about that paying into the fund is accepting that you've done something wrong. So it leaves people open for getting sued or countries being taken for more because they're admitting that they've done something wrong because they're paying into the fund. But $1 trillion per year for mitigation and adaptation to these nations, that if we go back to who's paying for the transition, are the ones that have done the least damage and need the most help because they're the ones that are going to be hit the worst by climate change, as we know. So that's not very just, is it?
No. It's also like I also feel like it's very unfair to the larger nations, like the North,
Mm-hmm.
right? All in all, like the actual damage, like big stuff has been like oil leaks,
Mm-hmm.
but like at a global scale, the ones that have done some of the most work to mitigate and to like, reforest and to into all of this and have done a really effective job have been Europe and the United States and then Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at satellite images of vegetation, the forest and stuff like that, like they have done an amazing job with just recovery,
Yeah.
and they've tried their best to move on to not in recent history, but historically they tried their best to move on to better forms of energy production. I don't know
Yeah.
what bugs in their brain right now. It's the GDP bug is in people's brains right now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the only thing that they can think of, and fighting esoteric enemies like mental enemies like China and Russia.
Yeah.
But other than like if you really look at it, I do feel like it's unfair for that specifically to be framed as a justice issue when it should be a humanitarian issue, because it leaves you open to those lawsuits, right? It admits fault in a way, right? And you don't want that, because if what you want is the transition and that's the priority, then you're going to make that the priority, even if you leave to the side some other like ideological priority that you might have,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because at the end of the day, it's just more important. It's bigger than us.
Yeah.
To save the earth is bigger than our petty squabbles.
Mm-hmm.
I feel. I might be wrong. Maybe we're really, really, maybe our ideologies are the most important thing. Maybe. I don't think so, though. That's not my opinion. And I don't think that the way it was framed lent itself to any action on anybody's part. And I think that as someone whose priority is to just get it over with. Just get this
Someone
over
just
with.
do it.
Yeah, somebody just do it. Like and they're like we've said, like small poor nations have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't need $1 trillion to do it.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's gotten cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten cheaper. Like a big part of the cost to nuclear, and the reason it takes double the time to set up a reactor in the United States than in, for example, China, are insane regulations, right?
But then if we don't have
deregulating
regulation,
everything else,
we get another AI scenario.
Well,
So it's
it's not
hard.
about not having.
How much red
yes,
tape
there's
is enough red tape,
there's such a thing as overregulation, right? That's what killed like the fishing industries in the northern UK, right?
Mm-hmm.
Overregulation on the part of the EU, which I think is part of the justified anger that the UK had for the European Union,
Mm-hmm.
and because that was a big industry, that was an enormous industry for them. It's the livelihood and like the history of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it was taken away from them, right? And like you said, nobody upskilled them. Nobody upskilled them. Like nobody decided that we're gonna help these people, we're gonna move them on. It was just like, you can't do this anymore. And they basically, like, a lot of them just sort of got on benefits and stayed that way. And that's unfair to them. That's unfair. It was extremely unfair. This is the lack of foresight that we live in. Like, there needs to be a reasonable amount of regulation.
Yeah. But
and
we can't agree on what that looks like is a lot of the issue.
Yes.
So, for
We
example, in
cannot
public
agree on that.
policy, if we go back to narrative and framing, and you're saying it's not been framed correctly, a lot of public policy experts will tell you, and you can read this in the OECD, that the framing of climate policies without clear distributional protections erodes public support. Basically, what that means is if I'm asking you to stop using your petrol powered car, and I'm not telling you why, or that I'm going to help you get an EV, or that we're going to pedestrianize the road so you don't even need a car anymore, or public transport is going to get better. If I'm not giving you an alternative to stop using the thing, you're not going to trust me because you're not just going to do it out of the goodness of your heart. Because
Yeah.
again, the hit is quite huge if a car is a necessity for your everyday life. But the distributional protection comes in of it's not just me that has to do it. We all are doing this. And therefore, you are equipping a community with a new way of transport that is more sustainable, that is greener, that is cheaper. Because again, you can't ask the one individual to do it. And that type of
Right.
community engagement takes a while for you to understand what are people willing to trade off and what do they actually need. A lot of governments think that giving levies or waivers or just chunks of money is enough. And most
Yeah.
people just want to live a life that is dignified. And that may be through, yeah, here's some money because you let us build this in your land. Or it might be that, okay, you can build in my land, but like, can we stop with the oil leaks, please, so I can drink my water? There needs to be a promise attached to the trade-off you're asking people to take for the just transition, because again, someone's paying for the transition, and they should reap some of the rewards of this sacrifice you've asked them to do.
But I feel like that's another like lack of focus thing. Like I understand the need. I understand, like, for example, in the United States, you have like you buy an EV and they give you a certain amount of cash back. Like the government will give you like a refund or something. But like, the grid is more of a priority. I feel like I really don't see this as like I don't feel like the transition from like gas car to EV is that. I think that's for when we have access to clean, cheap energy. Why are we focusing on this right now? And then
Because it
you
makes
also
people
have
money, Andres. Because it makes
so
people
true.
money. Again, the just
And then you have
transition
like
isn't just for people, it's for businesses and for governments and to keep the economy and the markets going. So
then,
EVs are a great example of how it appeases every stakeholder in the transition to an extent, right?
yeah,
But it's supposed to be one of those things that is a great microcosm of what the transition can look like when it benefits everybody. Because if you are a layperson who gets an EV, you get incentives from the government. You can drive through certain zones that you before were fined through. If you used your diesel, it's supposed to be more effective, cooler cars, blah, 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 blah. The government pushes their net zero and they're like, yay, we've cut emissions. And the person that sold you the EV made money. Everybody wins.
except for the people that can't afford to buy an electric.
And that's where we go back to the thing. But EVs are that great example of if it worked, this is how you do the transition, you know?
Sure.
But it hasn't
Absolutely.
worked yet, so we don't know.
And I feel like it's like a framing thing. Like you had so many articles. I really don't like the state of journalism because like you had so many articles, for example, covering like Bill Gates' super like hydrogen powered yacht,
Mm-hmm.
right? And hydrogen power is really cool. I love it. It's awesome. It's also a big luxury. Like it's a luxury power for again. Hydrogen is going to be big. It's going to be bigger than like the classic EVs with batteries, in my opinion, in my personal opinion. Just because I like the technology, I like it more than battery. What?
There's this amazing meme. Sorry, it makes no sense. Keep going.
No, I didn't hear you. You cut off. You froze, so I didn't hear what you said.
No, there's a meme that says that's my.
Oh,
Awesome.
sure.
I'll send it to
Yes,
you.
yes, yes.
Sorry, keep going.
Please, no. The problem with it is a lot of people covered the hydrogen yacht as very sustainable because it's on hydrogen,
Mm-hmm.
but hydrogen is actually a really inefficient form of energy storage because you lose just like with the electric grid, you lose energy as it moves through the grid, right? It's not 100% efficient. Think of it like that, but way worse. And a lot of the hydrogen produced is made using natural gas, so there's just like emissions tied
Mm-hmm.
to it anyway,
Yeah.
right? And so like it's not a technology that you can say right now is a green technology.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it depends on you getting the hydrogen from somewhere where the energy is 100% clean.
Yeah.
If they have facilities that are generating it, but from what I understand, most of the facilities generating hydrogen are gas based, so it's not even a thing, right? And the problem is it's because hydrogen, if you want to make hydrogen from the electric grid, I think it's like 60%, like it's 60% efficient,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is way lower than just electricity from any source. And it's a really cool technology, but it's technology of the future where we're post this, whatever this is.
Yeah.
Once all energy is green and we have surplus energy, that we're like, okay, what do we do with this energy? Okay, we can store some in batteries and we can turn some into hydrogen and this and that. That's awesome. That'll be great. But as it stands now, it's just not it.
And that's another thing. A lot of technologies are hailed as solutions that could work if X, Y, and Z. And it's like we don't have time for X, Y, and Z. We need the thing that works now. But that mentality of we need what works now leads to all the issues we've been talking about because we're very reactive and we want to get it now. So, as you can see, we're very torn. There's a lot to discuss in the just transition debate and who pays the price, who benefits from it as well. That's another conversation that would be interesting. But leave us your comments, your thoughts. You can read and find our resources at tangeliclife.org. We're compiling there all the things that we mentioned. So if you disagree with us, just quote what you disagree with so we know what you're referring to. And stay tuned for the next episode. Andres, any final words?
You know, let's hopefully things will get better.
Yay.
Bye.
Lukewarm, yay.
Yay.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Let's talk power, let's talk change. From rural lights to brighter days. Equity rising, voices strong. We're building tomorrow where we all belong. Tangelic Talks, energy, equity, pride. Empowering the world, side by side. A spark becomes a fire, a vision that's true. Together we rise, it starts with you.